Greetings. I am Dr. Noni Davis, and I am coming to you from St. C Academy, an African Center school here in North Carolina. And I'm a legacy owner, inheriting this school from my parents, the late William Edward Davis, and my mother, Sylvia Davis, who is still with us. Today, I wanted to continue on this journey with Ona Judge. And I think I showed this book last week. Here she is, Ona Judge, the story, Never Caught, the story of Ona Judge. And I have my 11-year-old students are reading this right now. Um, it's a really powerful way to teach American history. I love historical fiction because they're learning at the same time we're learning about George Washington, the Revolutionary War. Um, we're learning about the hypocrisy of this war, of folks, demanding freedom from Britain and at the same time denying freedom to folks who they had enslaved, these Africans that were working for them from sunrise to sunset. And it is a very an interesting story. And in a previous podcast, I always also mentioned how we really need some folks who are in this movie industry to take up these stories and write, because write these movies, produce these major theatrical productions, because these people's lives were amazing. Just the idea, the bravery, the courage, the determination, the a 23-year-old girl who decides to run away from the president of the United States. This woman knew this man was like the most important person in the United States at that time, and she successfully did it. And so I want to just go back and review real fast. So she was born January 1st, 1773, in Mount Vernon, Virginia. She was the daughter of Betty Custis, an enslaved African woman owned by Martha Custis Washington. Martha Washington, we know of her. And her father was Andrew Judge, and he was a white indentured servant to George Washington. And he was the one who uh, um, made George Washington's uniform, his commander in chief uniform. And her mother, Betty, was a seamstress, and she sewed dresses for Martha Washington. And I don't understand why, when you go back and look through history, the only person that they're talking about as far as designing or making dresses for presidents' wives during the enslavement, the only one that's mentioned is Elizabeth Heckley. But here we have Ona Judge and her mother and this woman named Moll, who were making these dresses for not only Martha, but Martha Washington, but her children. And it is noted in the documents in Washington at Mount Vernon. So they give her credit, but for some reason, um, there's no mention of other ones. And so that's one of the things I do want to do eventually, is see who else was involved in this designing and making dresses for these people. So Ona Judge died on February 25th, 1848, in Greenland, New Hampshire. So this lady was something else. Um, she began serving Martha Washington when she was 10 years old. And at 15 or 16 years old, she was forced to join 7 other enslaved Africans. And when George Washington became the president. So now, as I told my kids, we reminded them, look, Washington, D.C. was not the capital at that time. The seat of power was in Philadelphia. And so he had to go to Philadelphia to reside over the formation of this country. Um, and Philadelphia had this emancipation law, the 1780 emancipation law that any enslaved person living in the state in Philadelphia for an uninterrupted 6 months months became eligible for freedom. And so, as I continue to do research, I went on several sites, but even in this book, they have a lot of notations that letters and correspondence that Washington engaged in. What he decided to do is uh, right before that 6 months passed, he would sneak his people out of Philadelphia, and he did this rotation. So this group would go, and this other group would come, and this group would go, and this other group would come. So no one ever stayed in Philadelphia for more than 6 months, and they would be uh, so they could achieve their freedom. But this is the problem that most Europeans have with African Americans. There's this presumption that we're stupid. Their idea of intelligence for us was our ability to acquiesce, our docile nature, our get along, and don't worry about it. We're not going to let nobody beat us. We're just going to do what you say and get along. What they never considered, because they did not consider us human, was that our desire for freedom would be paramount to some of us. It would be, or quite a few of us, most of us probably. And the only way they could deal with those people was to say that they were mentally ill. If you didn't want to be a slave, that's the whole drapetomania thing, or something that had to do with your brain, that if you did not want to be a slave, that you were crazy. And I addressed that in my dissertation for my doctorate. It was, they just thought we were crazy if we wanted to be free. So what is so interesting here is that they just made this presumption. Oh, our slaves love us. We take good care of them, and we make sure that they have all that they need. And never mind, you're working 24 hours, especially if you're working for someone who was wealthy. You were at their beck and call. If they sneezed in the middle of the night, you had to be there. If their clothes got dirty, and we're talking about a time where there were no wash machines, there were no laundries, so everybody had to do all this stuff. The enslaved population was responsible for that, cleaning the house, and it was, these people were extreme, probably mentally demoralized, because they did not care about how tired you were, about your children. They didn't had no concern for the families that they were going to lose, because the only thing that was your job was to serve me and serve my needs. And that's what it was. And so owner judge was taken to Philadelphia and for that 6 months. But because Philadelphia, she went to New York, and she saw that now New York was a hot mess. My kids were reading about New York and how how the extreme you could have extreme poverty, and you could have extreme wealth, and how you had all of this confusion and lack of balance in New York. But Philadelphia also had its space where you had abolitionists and enslavers. You had free Black people, and you had enslaved Black people. You had people who were in the government, and you had dirt poor white people. So this was the first time that she got to see that, experience that, where she was working with poor white people, and she was also seeing that they were poor, but she couldn't figure out, why are they better than me? We are doing the same job and the same work. They're getting paid more than me. And so, according to the authors of this book, they even though they said that they don't have anything written by her until but within her voice until 1845, I think. They When she published an article in the newspaper, with in the Freedom newspaper, but um, they were able to extract conversations and interactions that she had with other people and commentary that she made, and so they were like, okay, this is who she was. So um it is believed that because she had gotten close to the abolitionist community, that she conveyed with them she needed to escape. And it is believed that she chose to escape on May 21st, 1796, at the age of 23, during the dinner hour. For her reasons for escaping were: first, Martha Washington had a crazy granddaughter, and her name was Eliza, and she was not going to be her slave under any circumstances. Eliza was getting ready to get married, and they were like, "We're going to pack up and go down here to this wedding, and you're going to belong to Elizabeth." And she was like, "Oh, Eliza, I think her name was Eliza." And they were like, "Oh, no, 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 no. I will not be doing that." And she said, "I want to be free, and I refuse to be Eliza's servant or slave." So the Washingtons did not expect her to run away. And it was crazy because I was looking in the book. One of the things they said when they were that they had, let's see, and graduate who was brought up and treated more like a child than a servant, and Mrs. Washington's desire to recover her ought not to escape with impunity if it can be avoided. So this is George Washington writing to Joseph Whipple. They also had something in here about how they thought that maybe she had been seduced by a Frenchman, and he tricked her, and she's probably pregnant, and she needs, they just go get her and all of that. But what is funny is that in 1845, when she reported to this paper, um, she said, I said, "Owner Dress was too much." She said, "Whilst they were packing to go to Virginia, I was packing to go. I didn't know where, for I knew if I went back to Virginia, I should never get my liberty. I had friends among the colored peoples of Philadelphia, and I had my things carried." She had already sent them her clothes and some of her shoes and stuff, and she had already sent them some packages, and there beforehand. And I left the Washington's house while they were having dinner. So she said, "Right, I got y'all, and I'm out of here." And so she ran away during the dinner time. And after all, they gave her they did, I know why they were shocked. They were giving her money. She was going to performances. She was going to they said she was going to um what clown shows and circuses and plays. And so she was experiencing this freedom and like what life could be out from under these folks. And they said she had nice clothes, and of course she was a seamstress, and she's probably getting all these hand-me-downs, or using fabric that was left over, and to make her own clothes. And but her name means fire. Ona means fire. And so she was like, "I ain't staying here." And Capricorns, you can't do nothing with him anyway. Capricorns are hard to control. And so she was gonna do that thing. Anyway, and then also we need to remember that Richard Allen, Henry Highland Garnet, and Absalom Jones were all up there in that same area. They said that Richard Allen only lived about 4 blocks from where they were living in Philadelphia. So, and he was a chimney sweep, and so he was in that house, and he probably just looked at her when she was like, "You got it," and so I got you. And so you know how a lot of people we can look at each other and communicate um, through body language, and so uh, she had to use quite a bit of discretion but I'm pretty sure that they conspired with her to get free. So just imagine, these people are in. This is the president of the United States. This is the man, the general who fought and won the Revolutionary War, being outfoxed by previously enslaved Africans and a 23-year-old. This is the reason why they don't want us to read these books. They don't want us to read these books. So Washington, general now president, was outraged that this 23-year-old had outmaneuvered him. And hats off, like I said, to the abolitionists who successfully outwitted the president, the general, who had won the Revolutionary War. And Black is brilliant and mind blowing. And this needs to be a movie, but I don't think white people can handle it. Now the news soon spread that Washington's had an African enslaved girl who had successfully escaped, and now she was mixed race. So she was, and I hate to say mixed race. So it was a multi ethnic. I'll put it like that. So she had her white father, and her mother was probably biracial. I mean, multi ethnic as well. But anyway, this child with her little light skin and freckles and black eyes and black woolly hair said, "Peace out, I'm out." And so she caught. Let's see. They said that she was on a. She arrived in Portsmouth. She left. She made her escape by boat via an abolitionist vessel, and it was the captain was Captain John Bowles, and he had a reputation of being an abolitionist. And she arrived in Portsmouth, and she lived with a free Black family and became a domestic worker. And a year later, she married a man named a free Black sailor named Jack Staines, and they had a daughter. But because she was technically still enslaved to the Washingtons, Ona had to be on guard at all times. So even though she escaped and she got to Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and I think I have pictures of Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Let me see. Do I have? Oh, yeah. All right. So here's an example of here's a picture. Now I don't know how well this is, but they said she was very fair skinned, and so I don't know freckles and stuff like that. But that's supposed to be on a judge. And this is the advertisement that that the Washingtons put in the newspaper about her being absconded from the household. But that's her. And then let's see, I thought I had a picture of, okay, I don't have a picture of Portsmouth, New Hampshire, but I mean it's a small little area. Is that it? No. But anyway, I'll look for it later. But so anyway, according to the no, so she had an African girl, da 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 da. So this act, so there was this thing called the Fugitive Slave Act. The first one was, I think, was 1793, and then they had one in 1850, and both of these acts basically said that if a person escaped, an African escaped, that the white slave owner had the right to go find them, no matter where they were, and bring them back. No due process, no judicial process. And so what happened is that a lot of people, sometimes people who were actually freed, would be kidnapped. And I think I said that in a couple of earlier situations where they could be actually kidnapped and just taken, and they could say, "Hey, that's my slave." And you may have never seen this person, but a lot of folks got caught up in that slave trafficking who were freed persons. And, but this is the law they came up with. And, in 1793, it was changed to the Fugitive Act of 1793, and like I said, they had no rights. And of course, this is what we see going on right now contemporarily. We have these folks that just being picked up off the street and sent straight to El Salvador, and no judge, jury, nothing. They just are, "You're guilty, we're out, and we're sending you to this internment camps." And so America has not changed, but prayerfully, like just like we Figured it out in 1865. We're going to figure it out again. Because what I did not know is how unsuccessful the Fugitive Act of 1793 of 1850. They said in its whole entire existence, only 330 enslaved people were returned to plantation owners. The majority of those who escaped were not captured and returned. So it was just is a law, but apparently nobody was listening. So Georgie didn't want to go to court. And one of the reasons why he didn't want to go to court is the same reason why many people in our these wealthy people, they don't want people to know all their business and all of that. And he didn't want, this thing to be nationally publicized. So what he decided to do was like, let me see if I can go around the boat here. And so he tried 2 times to get her back. So he made 2 attempts to capture her. The first time he sent a letter to Oliver Wilcott Jr., who was the Secretary of the Treasury, and through this guy, he said, "I'm okay. I want you to send this letter to this dude, Joseph Whipple." So this is Joseph Whipple, and many of you have probably seen that name, Whipple. Where was that Whipple name from? All right, so the Whipple was Prince Whipple. And I know a lot of people have heard that Prince Whipple was this, he was African prince. I did not know that he was from a wealthy family in the Congo. Yeah, it's Central Africa. And he and his cousin were the king said, I'm gonna send my boys over there to get this education. And guess what? It happened. They were lying. They took these boys, and that's how it says it says that at age 10 he and his cousin were sent to America to be educated. What? And so that I was like, what in the world? And so this is that's George and Martha. Scary, scary, scary. Anyway. And this is another picture. And I'm just showing you these because this is also dresses that this girl had made for them. But anyway, so Prince Whipple was with Joseph Whipple's uncle, I think, and served with him in the military in the Revolutionary War. And so that's how he became famous. But this was one of the families that were pro-abolition. And so when Joe contacted Joseph Whipple did not want to do this, but he said, okay, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna have her come to my house. I will by putting out an ad that I need a maid, because that's what the work she was in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and she was working as a maid, not as a slave, but as a maid. And so he posted that he needed a maid. And so she went to the interview, and during the interview, she said he was asking questions that didn't have anything to do with her being maid. And he realized, she figured it out. And he said, look, I tell you what, this is George Washington contacted me. He wants you to come back. And he said that if you come back, he will free you. And she said, oh, okay. And he said, now meet me at the harbor. And she was like, of course. And she did not meet him at the harbor. So Joseph Whipple said, hey, Georgie. She figured out, she said she ain't coming. I don't know. She's supposed to meet me at the harbor and did not show up. So now what do I do? So he was still president at this time. So, he left the presidency. He had some sickness and all kinds of nonsense. And so he decided, well, okay, I know who can do it for me. He decided to get his crazy nephew involved. And so this nephew's name was, what's his name? Burrell Bassett Jr. And he told Burrell, he said, listen, we're going to get her by any means necessary. So violence is okay. And he was like, bet. So Burrell went up there. Burrell was Martha's nephew. But anyway, he went up there, and he went up to Portsmouth under the guise that he was going to hang out with this guy, Senator John Langdon. And I think that they were all abolitionists. And so he said, he was there, but he left the house and went to Ona's house, knocked on the door. She opened the door, and of course they said she probably recognized him immediately because he was in that family, right? And she probably had seen him on the plantation. He said, "You're coming with me." And she was like, no, I'm not. I'm not coming nowhere with you. And he was like, well, you do this and you do that, and then we're gonna give you your freedom. And she was like, I'm not coming. And and they said he was so irate when he got back to he couldn't get her. So he said, okay, I'm gonna do this legally. My dad and my uncle said, let's go. So he said he would, when he went back to try to gather some police, I guess, to go and get her. Apparently, somebody in the household, the Langtons, were like, wait, tell Ona she need to get out of there. And Ona, when he came back, Ona was nowhere to be found. Ona and her daughter had run away. And so that was the second time that George Washington tried to catch her, and he was unsuccessful. And so, you know, Ona Judge was never caught. Her life was not easy. She was a maid. Her husband died, and even her, and she went through a lot of struggles. But they were like, why don't you just go back? Because you can live this beautiful life with all these beautiful clothes and da 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 da. She said, I'd rather be stinky poor than a slave, and because I need to be free. And so George Washington did not only lose on a judge, but he also lost another guy. And this guy's name was Hercules. I forgot. I got to have a picture of Hercules. Hercules was his name, Hercules Posey. And Hercules Posey what belonged to this guy who owed Washington some money. And the man was trying to sneak off and sell and get out of this contract with George Washington. But George Washington heard about it and said, no, you're not going. I need my, you're going to pay me. And so he was able to get 20 something slaves from him. And so this guy, okay, so Hercules was born in 1747 and died in 1812, and he was around 20 years old when this guy Posey was forced to settle his debt to George Washington. So Hercules apparently was apprenticed under Posey. Yeah. What? Oh, okay. Where is he? Hercules Posey. I was trying to get a picture of him. Hercules Posey. They're not showing a picture of him. Anyway, so Hercules became a really famous cook. They said he would cook anything. He'd had these lavish meals, and it was just amazing what he could do with food. And so he became the chef, and he was also one of the Africans that went to Philadelphia. And he would take the meals after he had cooked all these meals for Washington and for all these diplomats and everything. He would take the leftovers and sell them in the street. And they said he was making like $200 a year just selling food that he had cooked for George Washington. But he also was like peeping, hey, don't look at all these free black people up here. I want to be free too. And he was one of the people, unlike Ona. George Washington was alert this time. He was like, wait, this guy is trying to get free, and I am not going to let that happen. So what I'm going to do is take him back down there to the take him back down to the to Mount Vernon, and he gonna have to just do anything, but we're not even gonna let him cook. This boy self-emancipated himself. He said, I'm not going to stay down here. And he actually disappeared. And he was the other one. George Washington never found that man. He absconded and he was never found. They did say that after George Washington died, that's when Hercules popped up in New York. And apparently he was still cooking, but just undercover. But he died in 1812, and he was the other one. So Georgie, they lost two Africans, the strongest person in the world, in the United States, lost his slaves. I mean, a whole war veteran. Anyway, Ashe, Asheo.
If you're talking, they will hear you.
We all want our kids to grow up safe and healthy, so we show them how. And we tell them with honest conversations that let them know what we expect. Not just one time, but every chance we get. That's especially important when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. Kids not only need to know the dangers and how to avoid them, they need to hear it often from you. And when it comes to pain medications, opioids, they need to know that they should never be taken without a prescription and never shared with friends or family. It's dangerous and illegal. So talk with your kids and guide them through the challenges of growing up safe and healthy. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
So talk, they hear you. You can do it if you try.
I'm a St. Cia student. Of course I walk into the sound of drums.
I'm a St. Cia student. Of course I know my mom.
I'm a St. Cia student. Of course I can play the drum.
I'm a St. Cia student. Of course I can work with my hands.
I'm a St. Cia student.